Welcome back, deep divers. Today we're going to try something a little different. We're going to be looking at just one person's memoir and taking a deep dive into, well, their childhood.
Sounds fascinating. Is there a particular theme or focus to this memoir, or just a slice of life kind of thing?
Well, it's actually both. It's a glimpse into life in 1960s America through the eyes of a kid. So think quirky family dynamics, a surprising encounter with a cow lung, and just a kid's unique perspective on, well, everything.
I'm intrigued. And what's the overall mission of this deep dive? What are we hoping to learn or understand through this single person's story?
It's like looking at a time capsule, right? This memoir offers these really rich details about daily life, societal norms, and even the way, well, learning itself evolved. And it all kicks off with a cross-country road trip in 1963.
Wow, a road trip. That sounds like an adventure in itself.
Yeah.
Especially back then. Where did they go?
From Washington State all the way to Los Angeles. Imagine being 8 years old, crammed in a car for that long.
I can't even imagine. Kids today would be glued to their screens the whole time. But back then, it was a different world. Did they at least listen to music or something?
Oh, there was definitely music and storytelling. But the mother, she took things a step further. She turned the entire road trip into a hands-on educational experience.
Seriously, how did she manage that?
With a meticulously categorized travel log. Can you believe that? An 8-year-old keeping track of landforms, weather patterns, even population distribution.
It sounds intense, but also kind of amazing. It makes you wonder if that kind of immersive learning is more effective than anything we do in classrooms today.
The listener actually still remembers facts from that trip decades later, so maybe there's something to it. You know, that active engagement, the observation, the recording, it seems to have left a real impression.
It definitely challenges the idea of passive learning. And remember, this was before screens, before personalized entertainment. The shared experience, the family discussions, the direct observation of the world, it was all part of the learning process.
Right. And speaking of learning, the grandmother was reading aloud a novel during the trip. A story about a racehorse named Man o' War.
Adding another layer to the educational journey. So it wasn't just about facts and figures. They were immersing themselves in literature and history, too.
It highlights the resourcefulness of that generation, wouldn't you say? Finding ways to turn even a car ride into a rich learning opportunity.
It really does.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just one approach, it was a multifaceted kind of thing. Now, this memoir also delves into the family's religious landscape, and this wasn't a straightforward, everyone believes the same thing kind of situation.
Right. The grandmother was a devout Christian Scientist, known for her structured routine and disciplined lifestyle. Daily Bible study, precise meal times, and her one indulgence, a single, sees dark maple walnut candy each day. It's like she was living by a strict code.
And that discipline extended to all aspects of her life. Like, get this, the memoir describes her taking a dip in Hood Canal every single day, rain or shine.
Even in the pouring rain.
Even in icy waters.
Yeah.
Speaks to a remarkable willpower, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And for those who aren't familiar with Christian Science, it emphasizes spiritual healing and the power of prayer over, well, traditional medicine.
Right. And that created some tension within the family, especially when the listener and his sister experienced medical emergencies while they were under the grandmother's care.
The sister broke her arm, and instead of going to the hospital, they initially relied on Christian Science practitioners.
That must have been a difficult situation to navigate. Trying to reconcile faith with the very real need for medical intervention, especially for a child.
Exactly. They did end up taking her to the hospital for a cast, but you can sense the conflict in the memoir.
Right, this clash between different belief systems. It happened again when the listener had appendicitis. He needed immediate medical attention.
It makes you wonder how these experiences shaped his views on faith and medicine later in life.
It raises all sorts of questions, doesn't it? Tradition versus progress, spiritual beliefs versus scientific advancements. And it's interesting to note that the listener's immediate family, while religious, took a more liberal approach. They attended the University Congregational Church led by the charismatic Reverend Dale Turner.
Now, Reverend Turner was pretty radical for his time. He was a big supporter of civil rights and gay rights. It really paints a picture of a family grappling with some of the most significant social issues of that era.
It's a reminder that even within seemingly homogeneous communities, there was a diversity of thought and belief. Now, shifting gears a bit, the memoir also highlights the listener's incredible love of reading and learning from a very young age. Like, we're talking voracious reader here.
He devoured everything. Life magazines, novels, and get this, the entire World Book Encyclopedia.
Great, the whole thing, A to Z. That's impressive.
He wasn't just skimming either. Deep dives on penguins, rockets, bridges, anything that piqued his interest.
That insatiable curiosity, that drive to really dig deep, it's a sign of a lifelong learner, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And he even had a fascination with the transparent anatomical illustrations in the World Book.
A bit morbid for a kid, maybe. But it also points to a budding scientific mind.
But here's the thing. This intense love for learning wasn't always seen as a positive thing, especially by his peers. He started to realize that his interests weren't considered, well, cool.
Especially for a boy, right? There were definitely some rigid gender stereotypes at play back then.
Yeah. Intellectual pursuits were seen as girl stuff. He even mentions being the only boy in his summer reading program.
It's sad, isn't it? How these arbitrary labels limit kids' exploration and self-expression. Did he try to fit in or just embrace being different?
He was baffled by it, couldn't understand why everyone wasn't as fascinated by the world as he was.
It's like he was on a different wavelength. Did his family understand him?
His mother was supportive of his learning, but struggled with his lack of interest in blending in.
It's a challenge a lot of parents face. How to nurture a child's individuality while also preparing them for a world that often values conformity. Now, speaking of conformity, his Cub Scout experience offers an interesting contrast. Here's this nonconformist kid suddenly thrust into a world of uniforms, hierarchy, and military-inspired drill.
Yeah, it seems like a recipe for disaster, right?
Yeah.
But the memoir describes how he actually thrived in certain aspects of scouting, particularly the annual nut sale.
The nut sale. That's an interesting twist. What was it about that particular activity that appealed to him?
He was laser-focused on winning the prizes. The water pistol, the soccer ball, the slide projector, he had his sights set high. He even developed this whole scripted sales pitch and convinced his dad to drive him to more affluent neighborhoods.
So it was the competition that motivated him, the challenge of setting a goal and strategizing a way to achieve it. There's a glimpse of his future entrepreneurial spirit there, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely, and it's a great example of how seemingly insignificant experiences can actually reveal hidden talents and motivations. Now, as he enters fourth grade, that inquisitive spirit, that drive we saw in the nut sale, it starts to play out in the classroom, too.
It sounds like he was one of those kids who kept his teachers on their toes, always asking questions, always pushing boundaries. What was his teacher like?
His fourth grade teacher, Mrs. Carlson, seems to have had a mix of amusement and exasperation with him. He was constantly interrupting with questions, challenging the rules, and, let's just say he had a unique sense of humor.
Oh, do tell. What kind of pranks did he pull?
There's this hilarious anecdote about a story he wrote for a class assignment. He imagined Mrs. Carlson's hairspray being replaced with spray paint.
Oh, no. That's fantastic. Can you imagine her hair slowly turning pink throughout the day?
It's a classic kid prank, but it also reveals a certain playfulness with language and a willingness to challenge authority.
It definitely suggests a creative mind at work. Did this questioning spirit extend beyond pranks and into more academic areas?
He constantly questioned the rules, especially those that seemed arbitrary to him, like the emphasis on penmanship over content.
That's interesting. It sounds like he was already thinking about things like efficiency and prioritizing what truly matters.
Exactly. And he even had this fascinating take on the grading system. He argued that A3, meaning high achievement with low effort, should be the top score.
A3. High achievement but low effort. That's an interesting concept. It's like he was already thinking about optimizing his output, even at that age.
And this brings us to another memorable anecdote, the cow lung incident. Remember, we talked about his fascination with anatomy and how things work.
Oh, yes. I'm eager to hear about this. Did he dissect something in class?
He took things a step further. He brought an actual cow lung to school for show and tell. Can you imagine?
Hold on, where did he even get a cow lung? And what were his classmates' reactions?
With his dad's help, he went to a slaughterhouse, got the lung, and proudly presented it to his unsuspecting classmates.
I can only imagine the mix of awe and disgust. Did anyone faint?
You guessed it. One girl fainted. But here's the kicker. The listener, in his very literal, logical mind, couldn't understand why everyone was making such a fuss. He was focused on the science, the anatomy, completely missing the visceral reactions of his peers.
It's a perfect example of how his intense focus on logic and reason sometimes overshadowed social cues and emotional responses. It's like he was speaking a different language.
Exactly. And that tendency to prioritize logic over emotion is a theme that continues to play out as he grows older and encounters more complex social situations.
Now, did this logical mindset also influence his academic development? Was there a particular subject he excelled in?
There's a pivotal moment in the memoir where he discovers his talent for math. They were doing multiplication drills using, get this, a record player.
Record player for math drills. Wow, that takes me back. So did he struggle, or was he a natural?
He quickly realized that he was finishing the problems way faster than anyone else in the class.
That aha moment of self-discovery. What do you think it was about math that clicked for him?
He loved the certainty of it, the logic, the way every problem had a definitive solution. It contrasted with other subjects that felt more ambiguous, more open to interpretation.
And this realization, this awareness of his own intellectual abilities, seems to have sparked a shift in his relationship with authority, particularly with his parents. He begins to question their rules, their expectations, everything.
He even flat out tells his father, "No, I don't," when told to respect his parents.
Ouch. That must have stung. What happened next?
You can sense the hurt he caused, but also his unwavering conviction that he's right.
Like a declaration of independence, in a way. He's no longer blindly accepting what adults tell him. He's thinking for himself.
Exactly, and that independence of thought extends to his school life as well. He becomes much more selective in his engagement, focusing on the subjects that truly interest him and basically tuning out the rest.
Like his minimal effort in Spanish class. It wasn't a lack of ability, more a matter of priorities.
And amidst all this inner turmoil and questioning, he finds a safe haven, a place where his unique way of thinking is not just tolerated, but celebrated. The library.
The library. A perfect setting for a young mind, hungry for knowledge and a sense of belonging. Who does he meet there that becomes instrumental in his journey?
Mrs. Caffier, the librarian. She was known for her ability to connect with students at both ends of the spectrum, those who struggled and those who needed more challenging material.
She sounds like a remarkable educator. What was it about her that resonated with him?
She immediately gives him a job finding missing books, which he turns into a detective game.
Brilliant. Tapping into his love of systems and problem solving, did he enjoy it?
He loved it. And he becomes completely fascinated by the Dewey Decimal System, seeing it as a framework for organizing all of knowledge.
It's like she unlocked a secret code for him, a system that made sense to his very logical mind.
Exactly, and their bond becomes very special, almost like a surrogate family.
It underscores the profound impact a supportive mentor can have on a young person's development, especially for those who feel a little different, a little outside the norm. But just as this bond is solidifying, the family announces some major changes that will shake things up for him.
A new baby sister is on the way.
Oh, wow. That's a big change for any family, but especially for a kid who already feels a bit different, a bit out of sync with the world. How did he react?
Well, they announced it in a fun way, through a game of hangman.
That's sweet. A little lightheartedness amidst a big transition. But it wasn't all sunshine and roses, was it?
There's a bittersweet twist. They decide to give away their dog, Crumpet.
Oh, no. The family dog. Every kid's worst nightmare. Why did they do that?
Out of concern for the baby's safety.
It's a classic childhood heartbreak. The loss of a beloved pet, often with little understanding of the reasons why. It's a poignant reminder that even amidst joyous occasions, life can throw us curveballs, forcing us to adapt and grapple with unexpected emotions. And it seems like the changes didn't stop there.
With the expanding family, they decide to build a new house, which means a new school for the listener.
Oh no, not another upheaval. He must have been devastated, especially about leaving the library and Mrs. Caffier.
He was. He even tries to stage a protest, invites Mrs. Caffier over for dinner, and begs his parents to reconsider.
It really highlights the significance of that bond. How the library had become such a haven for him, a place where he truly felt at home.
It does, and the memoir ends with the family moving into their new house. But there's a small reprieve for the listener. He gets to finish out fourth grade at his old school, finding solace in the familiar environment of the library.
A bittersweet ending to this chapter of his life. It leaves us wondering, what will become of this bright, unconventional young mind as he navigates the uncharted waters of a new home, a new school, a new chapter in his life? It really does make you think, doesn't it? What will become of this bright, unconventional young mind as he navigates new waters, new home, new school?
It's like we're right there with him, feeling that mix of anticipation and uncertainty about what lies ahead.
And it's not just the external changes. He's also going through some major internal shifts, grappling with his identity, his place in the world. Remember how he was questioning authority, challenging those rules and expectations.
It was like he was awakening to his own sense of agency, realizing he had the power to think for himself, to question the status quo.
And that's a powerful thing, especially for a child growing up in a time when conformity was often valued over individuality. It makes you wonder how those early experiences shaped his trajectory later in life. Did he continue to challenge norms, or did he find ways to adapt and blend in?
It's a question that keeps coming up for me as we explore this memoir. How did he reconcile those seemingly contradictory impulses, the need for structure and the urge to break free?
Perhaps it wasn't so much about reconciling them as it was about finding a way to integrate them, to create a dynamic interplay between order and innovation.
That's an interesting thought. It's like he needed that framework, that sense of order, to channel his energy and focus. But within that framework, he still found ways to express his individuality, to think outside the box.
Like with the nut sale, remember. He embraced the structure of the competition, the clear goals and rules, but he also brought his own unique approach to it, developing that creative sales pitch and finding ways to maximize his reach.
It highlights his resourcefulness, his entrepreneurial spirit, even at that young age. And that same drive, that willingness to push boundaries, is evident in his academic pursuits as well. Remember how he questioned the emphasis on penmanship over content?
And his argument for A3 as the ideal grade, high achievement with minimal effort. It was a humorous take, but it also revealed a certain pragmatism, a focus on efficiency and outcomes.
It's like he was already thinking about optimizing his time and energy, figuring out how to get the most out of his efforts. And that mindset, that focus on results, might have served him well later in life, especially in fields that value innovation and problem solving.
Absolutely. And let's not forget his deep dive into the world of math. That aha moment when he realized he had a natural talent for it, that he could solve those multiplication drills faster than anyone else.
It was a turning point, wasn't it? It gave him a sense of confidence in his intellectual abilities, and it also solidified his love for the certainty and logic of mathematics.
It's like he found a subject that resonated with his way of thinking, a system that made sense to him on a fundamental level. And that sense of alignment, of finding a field that matched his strengths, can be incredibly empowering.
It can also be a key factor in success. When we're engaged in work that aligns with our natural talents and interests, we're more likely to thrive, to push ourselves further, and to achieve greater results.
And speaking of finding the right environment to thrive, let's talk about his experience with Mrs. Caffier at the library. It's clear that she played a pivotal role in nurturing his intellectual curiosity and providing a space where he felt seen and understood.
She was more than just a librarian. She was a mentor, a guide, a champion for his unique way of thinking. Remember how she gave him the job of finding missing books?
It was a stroke of genius, really. She turned a mundane task into a detective game, tapping into his love of systems and problem solving.
And his fascination with the Dewey Decimal System. It's like she unlocked a secret code for him, revealing the hidden order behind the vastness of knowledge.
It's a beautiful example of how a skilled mentor can ignite a passion for learning. She didn't just give him books, she gave him the tools and the confidence to navigate the world of information, to become a lifelong learner.
And that's an invaluable gift, especially for a child who's already demonstrating a thirst for knowledge, a desire to understand how things work. But as we know, life is full of twists and turns, and just as this beautiful bond was solidifying, the family faced some major upheavals.
The arrival of a new baby sister, the decision to give away the family dog, and then the move to a new house and a new school.
It's like a series of dominoes falling, each event triggering another, creating a ripple effect of change that must have been overwhelming for a young boy already grappling with his own sense of identity and belonging.
And those changes, particularly the loss of the family dog and the move away from the familiar comfort of the library, raise some important questions. How do we cope with unexpected loss and disruption? How do we adapt to new environments and build new connections when the familiar is ripped away?
And perhaps most importantly, how do we hold on to our sense of self, our unique passions and interests amidst the chaos and uncertainty of change?
It makes you think, how do we as people really hold on to ourselves when everything around us is changing?
It's a question that resonates, especially as we look back on this listener's childhood, this time of immense growth and transition.
And it's not just about adapting to external changes, is it? It's also about navigating those internal shifts, those evolving beliefs and aspirations.
Absolutely. Remember how he was questioning everything, from his parents' rules to the very definition of an A grade. There was this incredible drive to understand the world around him, but also to challenge it, to push against those boundaries.
And that kind of questioning spirit, that willingness to see things differently, is often the seed of innovation, wouldn't you say?
I think so. It takes a certain kind of courage to go against the grain, to challenge the status quo, especially when you're young and still figuring things out.
Especially in the 1960s, a time of immense social and cultural upheaval. Think about the civil rights movement, the space race, the growing anxieties about the Cold War. It was a world in flux, a time ripe for new ideas and new ways of thinking.
And this listener, with his insatiable curiosity and his unique blend of logic and creativity, it's like he was perfectly poised to embrace those changes, to make his mark on a world that was rapidly evolving.
It makes you wonder, what path did he choose? Did he gravitate towards science and technology, fields that were experiencing such rapid advancements?
Or maybe he was drawn to the arts, to music or writing, finding ways to express those internal contradictions through creative pursuits.
It's fascinating to consider all the possibilities, isn't it? And it really speaks to the power of a single person's story, how these early experiences, these seemingly small moments, can shape an entire life.
It also highlights the importance of fostering those unique qualities in every child, nurturing their curiosity, encouraging them to think critically, and giving them the space to explore their own passions.
Absolutely. We need more Mrs. Caffiers in the world, mentors who see the potential in every child and help them unlock it.
And as we wrap up our deep dive into this remarkable memoir, I'd like to leave you with this. What unique blend of talents and contradictions do you embody? What seemingly opposing forces shape your own thoughts and actions?
Because often, those are the very things that make us interesting, that drive our creativity and lead to those aha moments of self-discovery.
Thanks for joining us on this journey, deep divers. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and never stop embracing those beautiful contradictions